Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked on Wolves. Happy game day. Game 6, Wolves Grizzlies is tonight. I'll tell you why both teams have a case that they should actually have already won this series 4-1, and also the three things the Timberwolves must change to win the game on Friday night. Welcome in. You are Locked on Wolves.
You are Locked on Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked on Wolves podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked on Wolves. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy weekend and happy Timberwolves game day. The Minnesota Timberwolves are game 6 tonight against the Memphis Grizzlies back at home at Target Center. We're going to break down that game here in just a minute. First of all, big thank you for making Locked on Wolves your first listen every day. Locked on Wolves is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Odyssey, anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find the show. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked on T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. All right, so here's what I want to do today. I want to make the case why each team really could say that they should have won the series already in 5 games. I think it's not a stretch to say that. And I'll tell you why I feel that way. And then I also want to talk about the 3 things the Timberwolves keep doing. Chris Finch talked about this to the media on Thursday, and they're the same 3 things we've been talking about on this podcast. The three obvious things the Wolves need to just clean up in order to win Friday night, push it to a game 7 on Saturday. So we're going to do all that here today. First of all, interestingly, the Timberwolves Grizzly series is now the only NBA series going on at this point. There will be no series other than potentially Wolves Grizzlies, hopefully Wolves Grizzlies, going to 7 games. There were 3 series that went to game 6s. Only 1 series was a sweep, but we also had 3 series that only went to a game 5. So strange that only 1 series has the potential to go to game 7, and also strange that the Wolves are now just one of 9 teams left standing with a chance to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy when it's all said and done. So the Wolves Grizzlies is the only show in town this weekend. If the Wolves win Friday, the entire NBA is going to have to wait until Sunday. By the way, it's a Sunday afternoon potential game 7 tip at 2:30 p.m. on ABC in Memphis. So all eyes are going to be on Wolves Grizzlies on Friday night. All right. So here's the thing. Here's why I think both teams could make the argument that this series should already be over and have been over in a game 5. I mean, if you just first of all, you just look at the actual game. Remember, so game 1 was a game the Wolves basically led wire to wire. The Timberwolves won and had an emphatic victory on the road. So that's the Wolves, that's their win. So even if the Grizzlies had won the rest of the games, that's their win. Memphis easily won game 2. Similar story. They pulled away in the middle of that one. So each team has, their win that they basically deserved because of how they played, how well they played. The other 3 games could have gone either direction. Game 3 was the one the Timberwolves had multiple big leads and lost. So obviously that one could have gone either way. The Timberwolves won game 4 by 1 point. And that was a multiple, really a 2-possession win because the Grizzlies hit that 3-pointer that didn't matter at the end. But that's a coin flip because it's a 1-point game. Same thing with the last game when the Timberwolves tied the game with 3 seconds to play with Anthony Edwards, and John Morant hits the game winner after Edwards gambles on the steal. If Edwards doesn't gamble, that game goes to overtime, and who knows what happens. So that's another one possession that could have gone either way. So really, the last 3 games have been a result of dumb mistakes by the team that lost for the most part, and dumb mistakes for the team that won, but also just less dumb mistakes or more clutch plays at the end. This has been a really intriguing, entertaining, absolutely really breathtaking series, as everybody's talked about across the NBA landscape, but it's also been a really sloppy series. These teams have made a lot of mistakes. And I'll point out the most obvious mistakes by both teams that we can point to and say, hey, if they just did this a little bit better, they probably would have won one of these last 3 games that they lost. And in Memphis's case, they've obviously won 2 of the last 3. The Wolves have only made 1, or lost 1 of the last 3 games. Here's the first one for Memphis. Free throw shooting. Memphis, by far, has attempted the most free throws per game in the first round of the playoffs. I mentioned this before. I think it was before game 4. It was through game 3. And the numbers just keep getting crazier. Memphis has attempted 34 free throws per game. The next closest team out of the 16 teams in the first round of the playoffs was New Orleans, and they attempted 28.8 free throws per game. That's a difference of 5.2 free throws per game. So essentially 2.5 trips, just trips to the free throw line, right? There's 16 teams in the playoffs. There's plenty that average between 22 and 28 free throws per game. In fact, almost half of the teams were in that range. But Memphis attempted 34 free throws, or has attempted 34 per game in the first round of the playoffs, but they're shooting just 71.8%, which, by the way, now is a couple points below their season average. So they were 14th out of 16 playoff teams in the first round in free throw percentage, 71.8%. Interestingly, the only two teams that have shot worse than them at the line are Milwaukee and Golden State, who, of course, both advanced already in 5 games. So I think that's really interesting. So that's number one for them. You also want to look at three-point percentage. This one's even more interesting because in real time, it hasn't seemed, well, it has seemed bad. Outside of Desmond Bane, the Grizzlies' three-point shooting and like the odd Dylan Brooks game, I guess he had that one good game, I think, from deep. Memphis has been bad from deep. But looking at, so they're shooting 34.2% from deep. They're 11th out of the 16 playoff teams in the first round with three-point shooting percentage. But the teams that are worse than them, 3 of the 4 have already been eliminated. Atlanta, Toronto, Chicago, and Utah all shot worse three-point percentages in the first round of the playoffs. They've all been eliminated. The Phoenix Suns are the only team with a worse three-point shooting percentage that advanced. And of course, Phoenix's series win over the Pelicans was anything but stylish. Obviously, no Devin Booker for near roughly half of that series. But still 31.9%, which is, what? Points, no, I don't know, 1.7 point, or no, wait. Memphis is shooting 34.2% from deep. So, yeah, so that's like 3.5 points worse than Memphis. But 3 of the 4 teams shooting worse than Memphis, or 4 of the 5 teams shooting worse than Memphis from deep so far in the playoffs have already been eliminated. That's how bad Memphis has been from deep and how important it is to make three-pointers in the playoffs. The Timberwolves, by the way, are 4th in three-point shooting percentage among playoff teams, 38.8%. They're 4th in percentage. They're 5th in attempts per game, which is actually low for them. They're only attempting 36.6 three-pointers per game. But remember, this series has been played at a breakneck speed, and the Wolves are getting a lot of opportunities in transition that the Grizzlies are frankly allowing them to have. And also the Grizzlies are fouling a lot themselves too. So that's part of the reason the three-point attempts are down for Minnesota. But across the board, the shots the Wolves are giving the Grizzlies, which frankly, the Grizzlies have gotten quite a few open three-point looks they're just missing. And obviously their free throw attempts, they're shooting themselves in the foot quite a bit. And Memphis could make the case that they should have won this series in 5. Of course, the Wolves could look at their game 3 collapse and look at Edwards' mistake at the end of the game yesterday on Tuesday in game 5. Granted, that game would have had to go to overtime. The Wolves would have had to win in overtime on the road in a game 5. But the Wolves could easily be up or have won the series 4-1 if they don't have the monumental collapse, if Ant doesn't gamble, excuse me, at the end of the game on Tuesday. The Wolves could make the case that they should have won the series already. If Memphis just makes their free throws and makes open threes, they could make the same case. That's how even this series has really been. All that said, there's 3 things the Timberwolves have really struggled to do that they absolutely must improve. And actually, I'm going to add a 4th. Chris Finch talked about 3 post-practice on Thursday. But I'm going to add a 4th. And actually, they're all things the Wolves struggle with in the regular season. So as Dennis Green would say, former Vikings and at the time, former Arizona Cardinals coach, the Timberwolves are who we thought they were. They're making the same mistakes in the playoffs. So we're going to get to that here next. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at Built Bar. Summer is coming. With summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. Throw them in your bags and your kids' backpacks. Make sure that everyone has a bar so you're fueled for your summer adventures. The best part about Built Bars is that they're healthy and delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for health. With Built Bar, you can have both, and it's easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. All Built Bars and Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. If you haven't tried Built Puffs, you need to do it. They come in crazy flavors like banana cream pie, even churro, brownie batter. Who doesn't want a protein bar that tastes like a churro or like brownie batter? And they're only 140 calories. Sign me up. I have a box of brownie batters right now, and I've been having one almost every day. If that's not enough flavor for you, you might want to try the Mix Box. The Mix Box comes with 12 flavors of bars and puffs. Built Bar makes sure there's something for everyone. Most Built Bars have just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Go to built.com to get all your favorites: banana cream pie, raspberry, double chocolate, and so many more. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. Check them out at built.com. That's built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Again, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Make sure that you check out the Locked On Wolves postcast tonight, Friday night, immediately following Game 6 on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel or the Locked On Wolves podcast feed after we go live. Preferably watch it live on the YouTube channel. Myself and Chalanga from Zone Coverage and the CND NBA podcast. Chalanga will be live at the game tonight. He'll be live from Target Center immediately following. We'll discuss, hopefully, a Timberwolves win and an extension of the season until at least Sunday. We always bring you live post-game coverage with our local expert, Chalanga, breaking down the game with insight and analysis in a quick 10, 12-minute postcast. The Locked On Wolves postcast is part of the all-new Locked On Sports Minnesota. It's available on YouTube, again, right after the game, and then we'll post the audio feed right here at the Locked On Wolves audio channel, anywhere you listen to podcasts. So Apple, wherever you're listening to this, you can find the postcast after we go live on YouTube at Locked On Sports Minnesota. So be sure to subscribe to the Locked On Sports Minnesota channel. All the other teams go live as well following their games. So right now, of course, that's Locked On Twins and Locked On Wild. But the Vikings will do the same. There are a ton of great draft coverage over at Locked On Vikings right now. And Locked On Golden Gophers does a great job as well. So be sure to check that out. Okay, let's talk about the three biggest issues that the Wolves have had to this point in the playoffs and things that need to be fixed. Chris Finch spoke about this following practice on Thursday. He listed three things. He says, every time we've lost to these guys, it's been the exact same blueprint. He listed off the three things I want to talk about, and then I'm going to add a fourth. Number one is fouling. We absolutely have known forever that the Timberwolves are completely and utterly incapable of stopping themselves from fouling. They finished the season, in the regular season, 29th in the league in personal fouls per game. And by that, I mean they committed the second most personal fouls per game. The league's worst free throw rate, dead last. The free throw rate was 0.227. So another way to say that is that's opponent free throws per field goal attempt. So that means nearly a quarter of the time, or a little bit more than a fifth of the time, depending on how you want to look at it, right in the middle there, that an opponent attempts a shot, they're also getting a free throw attempt, which is absolutely bonkers. And that has continued into the playoffs, obviously. So in the playoffs, the Timberwolves continue. We already talked about how Memphis attempts the most free throws per game of anybody in the playoffs. The Timberwolves are committing 3 more personal fouls per game than the next most foul-prone team, and that was the Denver Nuggets, who lost in 5 games. The next most foul-prone team is the Brooklyn Nets, who were swept. And then it's the Celtics, who swept the Nets, and then it's the Grizzlies. So 2 of the 3 most foul-prone teams have already been eliminated, the Wolves being the other one. And Memphis, of course, is down there as well, because this series, the officials have been incapable of not calling fouls. And I guess the flip side of that coin is both of these young teams playing at a breakneck, frenetic pace, can't help themselves, can't stop from fouling. But still, 3 more personal fouls per game than any other team. Memphis is shooting 5.2 free throws per game, more than any other team. There's no other way to slice this. The Timberwolves have to stop fouling so much. I've been saying this. Go back and listen to any random show, especially after a loss in November. I was saying the same thing then. The Wolves all season, it's been weird because they've had essentially a top 10 defense, top 12 defense from October on. And their issues have been defensive rebounding and committing fouls, allowing opponent free throws, which are both really significant parts of defense. The point of attack defense has been much improved. The help defense, closing out on the perimeter, contesting shots on the perimeter, just clogging the paint, not being they ended up being a pretty high shot blocking team. They were third in the league in blocks per game. But part of that is the number of possessions they're using. I don't have the block rate in front of me, but it's not like the Wolves have a Rudy Gobert or, a big time shot blocker at the rim, but they've done enough to clog the paint to guard the point of attack. All that stuff's been good. They've done a good job on Ja Morant. They just can't keep opposing teams off the charity stripe. It's been miserable. And that continues to be an issue. And to expect that it's suddenly going to change, to anybody who says, and if you scroll Twitter, it won't take long to find somebody who says, well, if they know the problem, why can't they fix it? Well, that's the disconnect, right? That's, the coaching staff knows these things. They're communicating these things. The players have to execute. And that's you can point to the adjustments the Timberwolves have made and say, like, hey, the coaching staff has done a great job adjusting, and they have. There's been a couple of games where I called out the Timberwolves for not doing enough to get Cat the ball offensively, for not updating their defensive scheme or their rotations quickly enough. I think there's certainly blame to go around for the coaching staff in some of these losses, but the players have to execute the things that they're being asked to do. And Chris Finch has obviously identified the problem. I've identified the problem on the podcast. Fouling is probably number one, and that needs to change. It just hasn't, and maybe it's completely ignorant to assume that it's possible that it changes in game 6 of the first round of the playoffs when it didn't change for 82 regular season games. And it didn't change in the first 5 games of the series. But the Timberwolves have to stop fouling so much. The second thing, offensive rebounding for Memphis. It actually hasn't been as bad in the series as it could have been. Remember, this is by far the league's best offensive rebounding team and a bottom 5 defensive rebounding team in the league. The Wolves finished the regular season 27th in defensive rebound rate, but they were last for a good chunk of the season. They improved towards the end of the year. And it's just an issue that's always existed for the Wolves. In the losses to Memphis, they've been awful on the glass. And actually, in game 1, the Timberwolves were also awful on the glass and ended up still somehow winning that game. But the last game, the Wolves only lost by 2. They were minus 13 in the total rebound column. Game 3, which was the game that they were up big and then ultimately lost, that was the one exception. They were okay on the glass in that game. They were still a minus 7, but they were competitive on the glass in a game that they led and by a lot of points and should have won. But then part of the problem with the collapse was the rebounding issues. Again, game 1, they got killed on the glass and still won. Game 2, which was essentially the blowout loss, the Timberwolves were a minus 8 on the glass. So the only game that the Timberwolves won in terms of total rebounding was the close win in game 4, the 1-point win at home. Was the only game the Timberwolves actually won on the glass. But honestly, I expected this to be worse. I expected the rebound difference would be worse. And actually, I'm wrong. My memory serves me incorrectly. That's actually just the game they were the best at on the glass. It was their best performance, but they were still a minus 5 on the glass in game 4 to Memphis. So they've lost the rebound battle in every single game. The offensive rebounds given up have been miserable. Memphis has averaged 11.8 offensive rebounds per game, which is the second most of any team in the playoffs. Total rebounds, Memphis is still 4th. Somehow, I guess there's been less missed rebounds because both teams are shooting the ball so well because there's so many possessions and so many dunks and layups, and also free throws. Memphis is only 4th in total rebounds in the playoffs so far, but 2nd in offensive rebounds per game. And again, the Wolves have lost every game in the total rebound battle, and the offensive glass is what's killed them in the losses. As to be expected, is allowing those offensive rebounds, allowing the Grizzlies multiple opportunities. When Memphis, as I talked about earlier, has not shot the ball well from the perimeter at all. So the Wolves have actually done a pretty good job at forcing these difficult shots. They just haven't done a good job of corralling those rebounds to end possessions. I've talked about this a lot on the show. Defensive rebounding is a part of defense because the only ways that an opponent's offensive possession can end are a turnover, a made basket, or a defensive rebound. The Wolves have done a good job in general this season of forcing turnovers and also in the series. Obviously, you don't want them to make a basket. So the only other good opportunity for the defense is to ultimately secure a defensive rebound. And the Timberwolves have really struggled to do that throughout the year and again in this series. Okay, 2 more things to talk about. One identified by Chris Finch, another I'm going to layer in there that we're going to talk about here at the end of the show. So we're going to do that here next. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at Bet Online. By the way, the Bet Online line for this game, it opened at just 1 point. The Timberwolves were only 1 point underdogs. Granted, they're at home in a winner, you know, a win or go home game. And the Timberwolves opened as 1 point underdogs at home. I'm going to pull up where it is exactly right now on Bet Online to make sure I get this 100% accurate. And the line has actually moved towards Memphis. Memphis is now favored by 1.5 points on betonline.net. So the line's actually shifted in the favor of the Grizzlies. Betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find out the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NBA playoffs and the start of the MLB season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, let's close out the show by talking about the final two things that the Timberwolves have to clean up. The third thing that was mentioned by Chris Finch following practice on Thursday was the stagnant offense. And I talked about this a little bit on Thursday's show and actually immediately following the game on Tuesday as well. And I guess it was Thursday. I spent more time on the offense and then postcast and podcast following the game on Tuesday. The stagnant offense is really more of an issue late in the game, and that's typical, right? It's typical of teams to kind of have guys that want to play hero ball late in a game, or when you're giving up a lead, which has happened in what 4 of the 5 games to this point where the Wolves have had a lead and given it up, and guys want to take it, put it on their shoulders, be like, all right, I could pull us out of this tailspin. For the most part, that's been Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell because they're the ones often initiating the offense. They've got the ball in their hands. Sometimes it's been Patrick Beverley going at that one-on-one matchup against John Morant. We saw that in game 3 after the Wolves fell behind late. They went back to the well with the Pat Beverley isolation against John Morant, which generally worked really well in the first quarter of that game, but worked less as the game went on, and the Grizzlies were able to kind of load up on it, and John knew it was coming. But for the most part, it's Ant and it's D'Lo who are getting the ball in isolation and waving their teammates off, trying to go ISO and be the hero. Um, Game 5 was mostly Anthony Edwards. D'Lo had a couple possessions like that in the fourth quarter, but it was mostly Anthony Edwards. And Chris Fitch called it out immediately following the game. Talked about guys wanting to play hero ball too much. The Timberwolves also, incidentally, I'm sure you've heard this by now, but the Timberwolves had that players only meeting following the game following practice on, I think it was Thursday. They did a players only meeting. It sounds like a lot of it was to discuss sharing the basketball on offense. And that's something that if the Wolves don't get the ball to Karl-Anthony Towns early in an offensive set, it kind of devolves into pick and roll and or then an isolation action, or you end up in isolation. And I mean, it generally has not worked. Like Ant's a good isolation player, but if the Grizzlies know it's coming, they can load up on him. And they did that successfully in game 2 when they won easily. Remember, Ant had the big game 1. Game 2, they just the floor balance was, hey, we're gonna kind of have a free safety kind of lurking to double Anthony Edwards as soon as he takes a step inside the 3-point line. They've done that with Cat throughout as well. D'Angelo Russell, Memphis is more than happy letting him go one-on-one. That has been very clear. Now, early in the series, they were very worried about him because he averaged 32 a game against them in the regular season across 4 games. So they did press up on him. They wanted to keep him from walking into any 3-pointers, and they've done a good job with that. But now D'Lo's only really had one good scoring game in the series, and Memphis is a lot less concerned with him than they are with Ant and Cat, who are both better at getting to the free throw line and both overall just better scorers. D'Lo's got to show up, by the way. And he also can't allow the offense to be stagnant. It's up to him to make sure that there's some flow to the offense. They set the tone with that early, and then in crunch time, that's got to remain the thing, right? It can't continue to be a stagnant offense, and D'Lo's going to be a big part of solving that. My last thing, and this was not mentioned by Chris Finch, but it's something that's bothered me all season, is the Timberwolves' transition defense. It's been bad all season. It's been especially bad in the series. And the times when it's absolutely the worst are after made baskets. How often you go back and watch almost any Timberwolves game this year, and there's 2 to 5 possessions where the Timberwolves score and fail to get back defensively. A lot of times it's the player who scored. It's falling down, trying to draw the foul. It's, I don't know, being slow to complain that there should have been a foul, celebrating on the way back up the court. All these things have been issues at some point this season. And the opposing team takes the ball out of the net, runs down and scores after a make. Easily a lot of times. Taylor Jenkins even said this post game. I think it was game 5 where he said, we did a good job of running after makes. We kept the pressure on. We got more possessions because we played fast after they scored. The Timberwolves cannot allow that to happen. They have to score and get back defensively. And those are the easiest buckets to eliminate because they're simply effort plays in almost every scenario. And sometimes you're going to get, you're going to get put on skates by John Morant if he's playing really fast. That does happen. He's really good. But you can't give up multiple possessions a game where they're just simply taking the ball to the net, scoring after a make in transition. They're turning that into a transition opportunity. It's one of the reasons why fast break points are not a really accurate way to depict how bad the transition defense has been, because that's not going to count as fast break points. If the Grizzlies take the ball to the net and score in 4 seconds in a 4-on-5 or a 5-on-4, that's not going to count towards a fast break point. Fast break points are defined after defensive rebounds, when you can get out in the court and get an open floor situation. But if you simply don't get your defense set and John Morant or Dylan Brooks is just going breakneck pace to try and score at the rim before you get your defense set, that's just bad defense. That's bad transition defense. It's bad defense on the secondary break. It's bad matching up, bad communication, all that stuff. It's just as much the secondary break as the Grizzlies, even before they get into any true half-court action. And again, this is after makes and misses. The Timberwolves just don't do a good job of communicating that 24 seconds down to like 16 seconds left on the shot clock. Unless the ball's being walked up the floor, the Timberwolves are bad defensively. They're really good once they're locked in the half court, except for the defensive rebounding thing. The point of attack defense has been good. They've done a good job on Ja. It's the fouling, it's the defensive rebounds, it's the transition defense. A set half court defense is really good for Minnesota. It's exactly why Taylor Jenkins, if you listen to any of the audio, the in-game audio, he's imploring his team to just keep playing faster because the Timberwolves are so bad in transition defense and so bad with their communication. That continues to be the case. If the Wolves lose this series, and we could blame 2 things, it's the fouling and it's the transition defense. In my opinion, those are the 2 biggest issues for the Wolves in this series. If they do better in any of those things on Friday, as we've seen, they've still been in all these games except for game 2. They easily, as I said off the top of the show, could have won this series 4-1. They can still be competitive and struggle in some of these areas. They just can't be bad in all of them. And if they could just be, that much better in a couple of them, they'll win game 6 and force a game 7 on Sunday afternoon. All right. That's all we have for you today. We'll, of course, do the live postcast following the game Friday night at the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel that will post, again, 10, 12 minutes or so. It'll post here on the audio feed for Locked On Wolves, not the Locked On Wolves YouTube channel, but all the audio channels, and then the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. And then, of course, the Wolves win. It's a 2:30 p.m. matinee on Sunday, Wolves Grizzlies. That's 2:30 on ABC on Sunday afternoon in Memphis. We'll, of course, do a postcast following game 7 on Sunday, and then the full postgame podcast we'll post for Monday's show as well, either late Sunday or early Monday. But you will have the postcast to listen to immediately following the game. Again, live on Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. All right, that's all we have for you today. Thanks again for listening to Locked On Wolves, and thanks again for making us your first listen every day. Locked On Wolves is free and available everywhere, including YouTube. And again, you can also listen on Apple, Google, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. The Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Reminder, you can make your second listen the Locked On NBA show from the first jump ball, the play-in, to the last possession of the finals. Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.